You love learning about trading more than you love actually trading. And honestly, that makes sense. You watch a 15-minute video and leave with a new idea, clear entry, or a better way to read the market. Before the video, you did not understand it. Now you do. That feels like progress. Then you open the charts, you wait for hours, take one completely valid trade, and lose. That is the feedback trading gives you. So the outcome does not even tell you whether you did a good job. You finish a book and you know more than when you started. Even when it does not improve your results, it still feels productive. Trading does not give you that feeling so easily. Sometimes the correct decision loses immediately. And after enough sessions like that, opening out the window feels completely reasonable. Because there, improvement becomes visible again. This is why somebody can study trading for 3 hours without getting bored, but struggle to follow one simple strategy for 3 weeks. Learning gives you proof of progress almost every time you do it. Trading can hide that progress for a long time. Every new thing you learn also gives you more ways to respond to the market. And eventually, live trading forces you to choose between them. Because every new concept adds another possible decision, other reason to enter or stay out. And in the beginning, that feels like becoming a better trader. You understand why one setup might work in a trend. You feel more prepared for whatever the market does, but eventually all of that knowledge has to reach one chart in real time. The setup appears. One concept says the entry is valid. Other says the market condition is not clean enough. Both arguments sound intelligent, but you still have to click or walk away. If you enter, you lose the option for using those reasons to stay out. If you skip it, you have to accept that the trade may become a winner without you. Watching another video is much more comfortable, so you can keep adding information and tell yourself that the final decision will become obvious once you understand enough. But usually, the opposite happens. The more concepts you know, the easier it becomes to find a reasonable argument for either decision. The trend makes the entry look valid. The resistance makes skipping it look responsible. The problem appears when both arguments are available every time you need to act, because now the chart does not give you a decision, it gives you a debate. The trade loses, and suddenly the resistance was the important detail. The trade wins without you, and suddenly the trend should have mattered more. More knowledge gives you more ways to understand what happened. It also gives you more ways to question whatever you decided. So at some point you have to stop asking which version might be slightly better. You choose one definition of valid entry, even though other trader could use a different one and still make money. And when you finally do that, trading can start feeling like you are becoming less skilled. Because for years, progress looked like adding something. You learned a new concept and the chart became more detailed. You had more information behind every decision. Then correct execution begins getting simpler. You stop changing the entry after every result. You stop finding a new reason to interfere with the exit. The setup appears and the decision is already made. So you close the chart having learned nothing new. The next session is more of the same, and it might end with a new loss. There is nothing obvious you can point to it and say, I became better today. That can feel completely wrong, especially when you compare it with learning. After an hour of correct trading, you may have done absolutely nothing. And the results do not immediately reassure you. You can follow the same setup perfectly for 3 weeks and still be flat or slightly down. So the process feels repetitive, while the account gives you no clear proof that the repetition is working. Surely becoming better should involve doing more than this. But look at what has changed. Before, every chart created a new debate. Now the same situation produces the same decision. From the outside, that looks like less activity. From the inside, it can feel like you are using less skill. You still notice all the extra information. You simply stopped allowing every piece of it control the trade. And there is where a little emotional reward in repeating an answer you already know. Repetition is boring. So boredom begins to look like a warning. You assume the strategy has become too simple. And the fact that the account has not rewarded you yet makes that conclusion very easy to believe. That is usually when the urge to learn comes back. And opening another video does more than make trading feel interesting again. It can begin undoing the consistency you just spent weeks and months building. Then you watch a video about a market condition you have never used before. It sounds logical. You can immediately find our charts where it would have protected you from a loss. Then the next valid setup appears without that condition. Under your correct rules, the trade is completely valid. But now you can see a reason to stay out. So you skip it, and it wins. The next setup does have the condition, but after missing the previous winner, you start wondering whether it should even matter. The new concept was supposed to make the strategy clearer. Instead, you now have other decisions to make before every entry. Now both decisions have evidence against them. So you search for something that can settle the argument. Maybe other concept can explain when the filter matters. The strategy gains other exception. And the next group of trades no longer comes from the version you originally tested. This is where the cycle starts feeding itself. The new information makes execution less repeatable. Less repeatable execution produces results you cannot properly evaluate. And because the results make less sense, more information feels necessary. Listen, I lived inside this for years. Whenever execution became repetitive, I found something that made the chart interesting again. The worse the results became, the more information I thought I needed. The more information I added, the harder the strategy became to repeat. And the dangerous part is that it never felt like going backwards. But the account never received all of that knowledge. It received whichever version of the strategy I happened to believe in that week. And that version kept changing before it had enough trades to produce a clean answer. A year later, you can understand far more about trading, while becoming less capable of making the same decision twice. This is the real cost. You slowly train yourself to reopen every decision the moment execution becomes uncomfortable. Every rule gains an exception, every setup gains other interpretation, and every outcome becomes a reason to change the system again. So the behavior creating the uncertainty also feels like the only way to solve it. This is why the cycle does not stop on its own. Something has to decide when learning is actually allowed back in the process. The strategy feeling boring does not mean it needs other concept. A few losing trades do not prove that anything is broken. Your own execution has to produce a specific question first. So before you open another video, write down the exact question you are trying to answer. Then write down what result will justify changing the strategy. If you cannot write those two lines, there is probably nothing useful to research yet. You're reacting to discomfort. That can feel unsatisfying because it gives you nothing new to work on. So you take the next valid trade. Then you let the strategy collect enough evidence to expose a repeated problem, or show you that the urge to improve it came from drawdown. Because boredom is not evidence that you need more knowledge. A few lessons are not evidence either. Let the sample create the question. Until then, trade the version you already chose.